it's about time in the sport. And we're at a stage now where I have to make a video breaking down my pound for pound list. The year's basically over. There's no more relevant fights at all in the sport of boxing in 2023. So I feel it's the perfect time now for me to make an end of the year pound for pound list. Now, this is my opinion. There's a few factors considering for this list. The main factors are resume, accomplishments, but I also do consider natural ability and performances as well. I think performances are very important, actually. Honestly, more important than the ability of the fighter is how well they perform in their latest fights and in their biggest fights. So before I tell you guys my exact top 10, I'm going to give you guys a quick few honorable mentions. I think I'm going to give 5 honorable mentions for this one. So I would say the most obvious honorable mention, the guy that a lot of people truly feel should be on the list and didn't make my list, I would say he's my number 11, is Bam Rodriguez. Bam Rodriguez just missed a spot for me. The reason he didn't make the list for me is his accolades are very strong for his age. He's a 2-weight champion and a current unified champion. He's done very well, and he's looked very impressive in his performances, but his resume is a little bit shallow for a pound-for-pound level fighter. It's very good, but for a pound-for-pound fighter, it's a little shallow. He's won 3 belts in his career, 2 in this weight class and 1 at 115. His best wins come against Sonny Edwards, which I would say is the biggest win of his career because he unified. Sonny Edwards, Israel Gonzalez, Carlos Cuadras, and So Rungvisai. Rungvisai was probably his best performance. That and Sonny Edwards were his 2 best performances. But I feel that Cuadras and Rungvisai right at their prime. Israel Gonzalez is a good win, but Israel Gonzalez is never and doesn't have any big wins. He's just a very solid fighter. And Sonny Edwards, I've never ranked too high. The next fighter that missed this list that a lot of people are going to have an issue with missing the list is Gervonta Tank Davis. Tank is not on my pound-for-pound list. The reason he's not is I believe his resume is very shallow for a guy in a pound-for-pound list. He has a lot of solid wins. The Ryan Garcia win right now is by far his best, but Ryan Garcia has never won a title in his career. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Tank's a multiple weight champion, but he's never unified, first of all. Second of all, when you look at the names he's beaten for these belts, it really hasn't impressed me too much. I mean, when you look at the best wins of his career, Ryan Garcia, Mario Barrios, that's a good win. Leo Santa Cruz, who's way smaller. Jose Pedraza, who was weight drained. Yes, it's a good win, but it's the truth. He was weight drained. There's a few other solid wins he has. Hector Garcia, that's a solid win as well, but nothing tremendous. Another guy that did not make the list is Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson's very close to making the list as well, but he didn't make it for me. Once again, he's a 2-weight champion? He's a 3-weight champion, I think, at this point. He's a 3-weight champion, but again, his resume is not great. He did unify once against Valdez, which is a nice win to have, especially when he beat an undefeated Valdez. He beat Conceição. He had a very dreadful performance last time out against De Los Santos, but it is a good win on paper. De Los Santos is a good fighter. He's beaten a few other decent guys, Christopher Diaz, a few other guys, but not enough to be on the pound-for-pound list. Next guy, David Benavidez, just misses the list as well. His resume's gotten really good, and he honestly came out of nowhere because he was never really in consideration for the pound-for-pound list for me, and now he really built himself up to just miss making the list. Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, great wins. He's only won 1 belt in his career, which holds him back a little bit, and he's not currently a champion, but he should be. And I would say the 5th guy, I'll say there's a few guys that I could do, but I'm just going to end it now. Jermell Charlo is not on my list. He was relatively high on my list recently until that Canelo fight, but he's been very inactive. He's going through a lot of issues outside the ring right now I'm not going to get into, but he's been very inactive. He didn't come to win against Canelo, and he's done nothing since going undisputed. So Jermell Charlo is not on my list. So let's begin this list off. Number 10, I have Artur Beterbiev. Artur Beterbiev is number 10 for me. He currently holds 3 of the 4 titles. He has been very dominant, 100% knockout ratio, and his resume is pretty good. He's 1 belt away from being undisputed, so he definitely makes the list for me. His best wins come against Alexander Gvozdyk, Anthony Yard, Joe Smith. That was a really good one because he was unifying, and a lot of people were giving Smith a really good shot of winning, and he demolished him in 2 rounds. Joe Smith, Marcus Brown. I mean, he's got a few solid wins. I don't think his resume is stellar, but it's solid. And he's beaten the guys that have been put in front of him very impressively, and he's 1 belt away from undisputed. At number 9, I have Ken Shiro. Ken Shiro is a multiple weight champion. He's a guy that, if he was in the higher weights, would probably be on most people's top 5 pound-for-pound list. He is definitely a tremendous talent. I've been high on Ken Shiro for a while, and what made him make this list, aside from him unifying and being a multi-weight champion, is that performance against Hiroto Kayaguchi, where he took on the Ring Magazine number 1 at 108. I believe he was actually the slight underdog against Kayaguchi, and I'm very proud that I picked Ken Shiro to win that fight. And he didn't just beat Kayaguchi, he pulled a Crawford Spence type of performance where he took on the best or second best guy in the weight class, another undefeated prime champion, and demolished him and stopped him, and won a very impressive victory. He looked tremendous in that fight. One of the best performances I've ever seen in a unification. Also, he has a defeat in his career, and he avenged that defeat by stopping his opponent in 3 rounds. I don't know why his opponent's name escapes me. Yabuki. He fought Yabuki, got stopped, rematched him, and took him out in 3 rounds. So, very impressive from Kenshiro. At number 8, we have Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez is a guy who actually has a very good resume on paper. His resume is tremendous. Teofimo Lopez and Josh Taylor, that's some of the best wins anyone can have in the sport. He was the one to dethrone Vasyl Lomachenko. And unlike Devin Haney, not throwing shade at Haney, but he probably deserved the Loma win. I mean, a lot of people, I actually had the draw, but if anyone won, it was probably Teofimo. I know Loma had an injury, whatever, but on paper, he beat Loma and what was it? He took 2 belts from Loma, and the WBC was franchise, but he unified against Lomachenko. He beat Josh Taylor, 2-weight champion. Some people believe he was undisputed. He kind of got robbed of being undisputed. The only thing holding him back is that Kambosos loss, which I would love to see him avenge at one point, because he's a much better fighter than George, but that Kambosos loss is holding him back, and that's why he's at number 8. He'd probably be at like number 5 or 4 if he didn't have that Kambosos fight, but he's done a great job for himself. He defeated an undefeated champion in Josh Taylor, former undisputed Josh Taylor, and no one took those belts from Josh Taylor, so he basically beat a prime undefeated undisputed champion. Beat Josh Taylor, very impressive, proved me wrong twice. He also has a Richard Komei victory, a Masayoshi Nakatani victory. He has a Sandor Martin victory, even though that one's up for debate. He's done a very good job for himself. At number 7, we have Juan Francisco Estrada. Now, Juan Francisco Estrada's resume is tremendous. He's a multi-weight champion. He's been unified. He's, as I said, won belts in multiple weight classes, taken on multiple champions in his career. He has 2 wins against Chocolatito Gonzalez. I'm not going to lie. Both of those fights are very questionable. But on paper, he beat Chocolatito twice. He was the man that dethroned Sorong Vasai after Sorong Vasai knocked out Choco. So he beat Sorong Vasai. He beat Brian Valoria. He's beaten a lot of great fighters in his career. The reason he slipped all the way to 7 is inactivity. It's very unfortunate. He should have had that Kazuto Ioka fight before the year ended. That probably would have bumped him up a spot or 2. It's a shame that fight didn't happen. But Juan Francisco Estrada is a true elite fighter who's consistently been one of the best fighters in the sport for years. He also beat a prime Carlos Cuadras. That was a great fight and a great win. Estrada has done a tremendous job for himself, and it's a shame he's been inactive because I would have picked him to beat Ioka, and that win would have been great for him. So hopefully he can get the ball rolling and take on some of these champs and unify. But yeah, Estrada at number 7. At number 6, I have Devin Haney. Devin Haney, in my opinion, I'm going to say right now, once Inoue, Crawford, and Usyk, once those 3 guys aren't, I'm not going to say around anymore. I think Crawford and Usyk are at the tail end, but I think Inoue's going to be here for a little longer, right? I think once Crawford and Usyk aren't in the picture, Devin Haney is going to be number 2 pound for pound behind Naoya Inoue. I mean, this guy, first of all, his resume for his age is tremendous. What is he, 24 years old? And he has wins against Vasyl Lomachenko, and I know I had Loma winning, but on paper he beat Loma. He has a win against Vasyl Lomachenko, Regis Prograis, Jorge Linares, Jojo Diaz. I mean, it's not great after Loma and Regis, but he's a former undisputed champion and now a champion at 140 and the number 1 guy or number 2 guy in his weight class. 2-weight champion and a former undisputed champion. He's taken on the best competition. He has so many options as well because he can make that Teofimo fight. He can make that Tank fight. He can make that Subriel Matias fight. He has so many options for him, but right now he has the George Kambosos win. That's the one I'm forgetting. That's the big one. 2 George Kambosos wins as well. I mean, this guy, he's number 6 for me, but he's getting up there for sure. Honestly, I think very soon he'll be top 2. Once Crawford and Usyk are done with the sport, once they retire, I see him being number 2. But Devin Haney's done a great job in his career so far. Only 24 years old is what makes it tremendous, and he truly has a bright future in his hands. Number 5, I gave it to Dimitri Bivol. The reason Bivol's all the way at 5, and I know that sounds crazy, all the way at 5. The reason he's at 5 in the first place is he beat the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, Canelo Alvarez. I think that automatically puts him on the list. A lot of people are trying to not have him on their pound-for-pound list. They're delusional. He beat the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, and he dominated him 10 rounds to 2. Then he came back and took on a former champion, undefeated 42-0 Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, and dominated him as well. Beat him just as badly as he beat Canelo. I think I had that fight 9 rounds to 3 for Dimitri Bivol. Yes, he's been inactive, and that's definitely what's holding him back. He only fought once this year against Lyndon Arthur. That fight doesn't do anything for him. But what he did in 2022, being my fighter of the year as well in that year, he had a great year, and I really believe he's very close to really making a big splash in the sport once again, just like he did in 2022. That Canelo win is what's doing it. What's holding him back as well is Dimitri Bivol's only held one belt in his career. He's never unified, and he's only a one-weight champion. So he's only held one belt in his career. That definitely bumps him back a lot. But that Canelo Alvarez win, beating the number one pound-for-pound fighter, automatically puts him high up. At number 4, I have Canelo Alvarez. Now, this is going to be a little iffy in a way where people are going to say, oh, you have Canelo above Bivol, but Bivol beat him. Guys, just because you beat a fighter doesn't automatically make you above them. 99% of scenarios it would, but in this scenario it doesn't. Bivol was above Canelo for a brief period of time. The reason that Canelo resurpassed him is Canelo stayed active. And yes, Canelo's wins haven't been tremendous. I mean, a washed Triple G, John Ryder, Jermell Charlo. It's not impressive at all, in my opinion. But when you look at what Canelo, first of all, he's still an undisputed champion at 168. He's a 4-weight champion. He's unified multiple times, or not multiple times, but he's unified a couple times. His resume is stellar. I'm not a Canelo fan, as you guys know, but his resume is absolutely stellar. He's beaten so many high-level fighters. Triple G twice. I mean, I only gave him one of those fights. I know on paper he's beaten Triple G twice. He's beaten Danny Jacobs, out of prime Sergey Kovalev, but still. Callum, Billy Joe, Caleb Plant. I mean, he's beaten a lot of these guys, man. He's number 4 just off of his body of work. However, Canelo is slipping. He's slipping drastically. If he doesn't make that Benavidez fight anytime soon, I think if he beats Benavidez, he might even bump up to number 3 on my list. But I don't think he's going to even fight him. If he does, I don't think he's going to win. Just telling you guys straight up. He needs to make that Benavidez fight or at least take on someone really solid. If he stays at 168, the only fight I want from him is Benavidez. So he needs to make something happen or he's going to keep getting bumped down. At number 3, we have Alexander Usyk. Usyk was my number 1 pound for pound for about a year, I believe. He was number 1 pound for pound for a good amount of time. I think until July of this year, he was my number 1 pound for pound. He slipped a couple spots. The Tyson Fury fight, speaking of Tyson Fury, that guy's probably an honorable mention as well, but we're not going to get into Tyson Fury. Alexander Usyk is very likely to bump up on this list. I'm not going to say he'd be 1, but there's a good chance he'd end up being number 2. He would definitely, honestly, no, Usyk would probably be number 1 if he beats Tyson Fury, but he was number 1 after he beat AJ the first time. He beats AJ again and kind of maintains that number 1 spot. But 2023 was a very weak year for Alexander Usyk. All he did was beat up Daniel Dubois, and that fight actually did more damage to Usyk in his career than positive. I mean, yes, he has Dubois on his resume, but a lot of people believe he should have gotten knocked out in that fight. I'm not one of them, but a lot of people believe that. And Dubois, even having him on your resume, it's not anything that tremendous. I mean, Joe Joyce already beat him. Dubois is nothing special. He's a solid name, but he's nothing tremendous. Usyk had a very shallow 2023, and I think 2024 is the year where he brings it all back and ends up reclaiming that spot in the pound-for-pound list. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because everyone knows who the final 2 are going to be. But I'm going to say straight up, number 2 is Terrence Crawford. It's a shame, because Terrence Crawford, because Triple G's pretty much retired, right? Terrence Crawford's my favorite fighter in the sport right now. I can't have him at number 1 right now for the simple fact that him and Inouye, accolade-wise, are pretty much dead even. The only difference is Inouye's been a champion in one more weight class than Crawford. That's the only thing really separating them for me. I feel Crawford, his resume is solid. I think if it wasn't for the Errol Spence win, his resume would be a little weaker than you'd want it to be. But his resume is very solid. The Errol Spence win is an amazing win. I think that's a better win than any win Inouye has. But Inouye did what Crawford did in a shorter period of time and becoming a 2-weight undisputed champion. He's a 4-weight champion in his career. He's been just as dominant as Crawford, but I think what's separating him is the activity. Inouye has done so much in the last couple of years. Crawford's fought once a year for pretty much every year since, 2019? I believe 2019 he fought twice. He fought Khan and Mean Machine. Since then, he fought once in 2020 against Brook, once in 2021 against Porter, once in 2022 against Avanesian, and once this year against Spence. If he was a little more active, if he fought Spence one more time this year, he probably would be above Inouye, who's obviously number 1. I don't think anyone is doubting that. But I feel Crawford, just the activity is what's holding him back for me. But I believe Crawford is the best fighter in the sport. But pound for pound and best fighter are different. And I have Inouye above Crawford. Inouye's a 4-weight champion. 2-weight undisputed just like Crawford, except he did it way quicker. I think Crawford fought the best opponent out of the 2 on that run. Because if you look at that run, Inouye beat Paul Butler. To become champ at 118, he beats Manny Rodriguez and Donaire, right? And then at 122, he beat Fulton, which is a really good win. And then Tapales, which is a decent win. Tapales was coming off the MJ victory, and I felt if he beat Fulton and MJ, that would have been better for his career, but Tapales got the victory against MJ, so it ended up being Tapales, even though I felt MJ deserved that win against Tapales. Inouye did it way quicker. He's won a belt in one more weight class, and that's the only difference. However, Crawford can very well take that spot back. If Crawford fights someone like a Tim Tszyu or Boots Ennis, if he fights, or even a second Spence fight, he will surpass Inoue once again. That's my full video. I've rambled for a little too long. Just a quick little recap. Number 1, Inoue. 2, Crawford. 3, Usyk. 4, Canelo. 5, Bivol. 6, Haney. 7, Estrada. 8, Teofimo Lopez. 9, Kenshiro. And 10, Artur Beterbiev. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And tell me your list. And tell me if you disagree with me. I think Crawford and Usyk have a very good chance of taking that spot over Inoue. I think these are the 3 horsemen of the sport right now. And it's funny because they all are from different continents. You got Asia represented by Inoue. You got North America represented by Terence Crawford, and you got Europe represented by Alexander Usyk. These 3 men are true throwback fighters, and they represent everything great with the sport of boxing. I'm so proud of the 3. They've really made us all proud, and I'm a fan of all 3 as well, which makes me even happier. That's my list, though. Have a good one, guys. Tell me your list in the comment section below. I'll see you guys later. God bless. Peace.